Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Reserved Investments, and thank you for joining me. So in today's video, spoiler alert, it is going to be an interactive screen sharing video. We are going to go over some of the highlights, mainly focused on vintage Kenner Star Wars items that went up for bid and ended on July 30th, 2025. This is Hake's auction number 244 for those of you keeping track. So I think it's very important that I do a lot of videos on this particular market because I don't know if you guys are aware of this. In 2024, one of the hottest markets in the entire antiques and collectibles trade was the market for vintage graded factory sealed vintage toys and play sets with, of course, vintage Kenner Toys Star Wars leading the charge. Now, there are other toy lines that are also trending at present time that are hitting all-time highs when we look at the market for vintage Transformers toys, G.I. Joe, Masters of the Universe, even to a lesser extent, Thundercats and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, I'm not going to go over any of those sales in this video. Pretty much almost all the items we're going to be talking about fall under the banner of the vintage Kenner Toys Star Wars line, with the exception of one that we're going to talk about at the end of the video. And that's more of a surprise because I just want to talk about that market. I'm not going to reveal what it is yet, but the market that we're going to be talking about at the end of this video is quite fascinating to me. It kind of ties into collectible trading cards and the like, and it's very interesting to see the dynamics of that market unfolding before our very eyes. So without further ado, let's talk about some of these record-breaking pieces. And I do want to talk at first about a piece that I was thinking of bidding on. You guys know, if you watch my channel, Reserved Investments, even if you read the articles that I write for Antiques and Auction News, I really love collecting and investing in vintage Kenner Toys Star Wars proof cards. Now, a lot of you out there, you watch my videos, you listen to my commentary, you still don't know what a proof card is. I have done massive amounts of videos on this already, at least like 3 or 4 on my channel. I'm going to show you, if you see my screen right now, this is an example of a Star Wars Power of the Force proof card. Now, this is a very special piece. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Power of the Force proof cards. These are quite rare. Most of these sell for thousands upon thousands of dollars when they come up for bid. And this piece is no exception. This particular piece of cardboard that you're seeing right here on the screen, front and back, graded by AFA in 85, near mint plus condition. This item sold for $12,850.20, which does include the buyer's premium. Now, even me, I was taken off guard by the price that was achieved for this item. I was expecting this piece, and maybe this is my naivety, still not understanding the full strength, or I should say, pun intended, the force of this market at present time. I was expecting this piece to sell between $6,000 and $7,000. As a matter of fact, if this would have been right around $7,000, I was getting ready. I was going to put a bid in. Then it popped. And of course, it now sold, as you can see, for close to $13,000. Now, a lot of people come to me and they still don't understand, Sean, why would anybody pay close to $13,000 for a piece of cardboard where you're not even getting the figure? You're not getting anything else with it. It just looks like pretty much an action figure card back. Again, this is kind of considered to be in the prototype market area. These items, of course, were never meant to be released to the general public, proof cards. And that's what makes them so fascinating. And the Power of the Force proof cards are some of the most sought after vintage Star Wars proof cards in existence. You can routinely see a lot of these selling for a minimum of $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on a regular basis. If they're even in, they don't even have to be in 85 condition. I prefer to go after proof cards in 85 condition or higher at a bare minimum. There are some, though, that you will see that sell in AFA 80 condition and they still hit like the $6, $7, $8, $10,000 or above range. It just depends on the rarity and demand of the actual character that is on the proof card. Case in point, I remember one time I was following an auction, I think it was Hake's. I could probably go and find it in the past auction history here. It was a Power of the Force Bib Fortuna proof card, and it was like, I think in 80 plus. It wasn't even in AFA 85. And I think if I recall, it sold for like, I think close to $17,000 if I remember correctly. So the Power of the Force proof cards are some of the most sought after and rarest proof cards in existence. So just keep that in mind when we talk about proof cards. You know, right now, everybody is fascinated with the Revenge of the Jedi proof cards. And I get it. I collect those proof cards as well. But I keep trying to tell people, Revenge of the Jedi proof cards, overall, for most of the characters that were released in that series, they are much more common and easier to find than most of the other proof cards. And I want to make that very clear because I have a lot of people that are reaching out to me asking me what the best way to go about investing in this market. You still have to do a lot of market research, and you need to understand that just because the movie Return of the Jedi was never released as Revenge of the Jedi, it doesn't mean that those pieces that have their Revenge of the Jedi insignia on them are scarcer than other proof cards. You have to take that into account. In all honesty, even Star Wars Empire Strikes Back proof cards, they are much more scarcer than Revenge of the Jedi proof cards. So just keep that in mind. Now, there are a couple of characters. I don't want to talk about this too much in this video. There are a couple of characters like, of course, Boba Fett, Darth Vader, Luke Farmboy. Those particular characters in Revenge of the Jedi proof card versions, they sell for a significant premium because a lot of people, obviously, if they're going to buy a Revenge of the Jedi proof card, they want a character usually that has some type of significance or popularity. And of course, you can't get much more popular than Boba Fett or, of course, Darth Vader or even Luke Skywalker for that matter. So just keep that in mind if you're going to start collecting those items. Now, we're going to start off with one of the largest items that sold for the highest amount in this particular sale. And this is, of course, the Star Wars Special Early Bird Certificate Package Rare Store Display. Now, that is exactly as it states. This is a rare store display. So this was never released to the general public. And there is a 30-second blurb here that I am going to play. I hope I don't get hit with a copyright strike for doing this. I'm only going to do it for this one video, just so that you guys can see what is so special about this item. Because, spoiler alert, this item sold for over $112,000. This is now a top-tier Star Wars collectible. I mean, that is insane for pretty much what we're looking at, again, a piece of cardboard, as some of you would describe this. So, again, this piece was an AFA 70, and again, it was never readily available. Let me quick show you what was sold for this amount. You can see it right on my screen now. This is a picture of the front. This is a picture of the back. And again, it is encapsulated and graded by AFA. Now, here's a little blurb that's 30 seconds long that Hakes has uploaded to their site. I am going to click play.
Star Wars figures. R2-D2. Chewbacca, Luke, and Princess Leia. They're the Star Wars Early Bird set of figures. These 4 action figures are not yet available, but this Star Wars Early Bird certificate package is in stores with this colorful Star Wars picture display stand and certificate to send in to get a set of 4 figures by mail. They'll be sent to you at home between February 1st and June 1st. The Star Wars Early Bird certificate package, new from Kenner.
So I think what you can see, again, this is part of what we call store displays, advertising. These particular pieces were never made available to the general public. So that's why something like this is in demand, because every time I do one of these videos, whether it's a proof card, whether it's a piece of vintage Star Wars advertising, whether it's something like this, I do get emails. Sean, please explain to me why someone would pay over $100,000 for what looks like to be a piece of almost beat up cardboard in a plastic case. So you're really paying for the cultural relevance and the historic rarity of this piece. That's why it's selling for so much. Now, on top of that, we did have an early bird mail away kit, which includes the double telescoping Luke Skywalker figure in it, in AFA 90, meaning there's none higher on the population reports ever graded by AFA, that sold for a little over $45,000. Now, to be fair, a lot of people are splitting this, and again, I'm listening to multiple people. I was involved in a conversation about this. Some people think that this should have went higher. I honestly think, given the market, the price was very fair for this item. And there's other people out there that think that this item went bonkers. I'm kind of on the fence where I understand the importance of this piece. So this, again, is the early bird mail away kit that you would get, because remember, back when Kenner first started producing Star Wars figures, there was so much demand that the figures were not readily available. So they pretty much sold a kit where you would fill out the certificate, mail it in, and then when the first 4 figures were available, they would mail them to you. And that's what this early bird kit was. So it doesn't really surprise me that this sold for over $45,000. There are, again, some people out there, given the fact that this was in AFA 90 condition, that have said to me they expected it to sell for more than $50,000. I think the $45,000 was a very fair price given the current market, and that's a very strong result for this item. Now, your mileage may vary. Maybe you don't think that this item is as important as somebody spending $45,000 on it. I just think this is a very unique, critically important item if you are collecting vintage Star Wars pieces. Now, this isn't really something that I would choose to invest in because, again, over the long term, it is possible you're going to have some wear, you're going to have some discoloration, you're going to have some breakdown of these items. That's why I tend to stick with proof cards. I don't like going after the vintage figures themselves for that reason. But if you are somebody that really wants to own this, you want to invest in it, this is an investment grade piece, guys. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to hide it. This is something where you can seriously tie your money up. And potentially, if demand continues like it is now, this could sell for significantly more in the future, especially this being an AFA 90 condition. And that's a very high grade for this, make no mistake, because even if you look at the subgrades here, the bubble is in 90. If you look at the figures, if you look at everything here is in 90 condition. This is pretty impressive for this set. So I just want to make that very clear. Now let's go on to this piece, because again, we're still talking about, at least in this instance, vintage advertising. So this is a Star Wars 1979, get a free Boba Fett, long display header in AFA 80+. And this is a very rare piece. It even says here 1 of 4 graded. So this sold for a little over $31,000. And it is exactly what it states. It is pretty much a piece of cardboard. This was the original advertising header that advertised how you could get a free Boba Fett action figure. Now, of course, this led to the controversy where a lot of you already know. When Boba Fett was first announced, it was supposed to be a rocket-firing action figure. Then, unfortunately, Mattel had an issue with the Battlestar Galactica line where they had particular figures and playsets that had projectiles, and a kid unfortunately choked and died off of one of those projectiles. So they changed the design of the Boba Fett rocket-firing figure to just be the Boba Fett figure with a rocket that is attached to the figure and doesn't fire. But this advertising is in demand. As a result, it is somewhat very scarce out there on the market. So I can see why this piece sold for over $31,000. And this brings me to another point I want to bring up. If you guys are really listening to my feedback, listening to my analysis of this market and taking it in the heart, I want to let you know that anytime you have vintage advertising relate it to a culturally relevant, historically significant collectible, that's usually where the money is, because very few people save those pieces. For instance, I get into a lot of debates with a lot of the graded video game collectors. And a lot of the graded video game collectors, there's a lot of them out there right now that are very upset because the bubble, the speculative bubble that blew up right around the pandemic, pretty much came collapsing down. And one of the things that I've always told them is, if you really want to invest in pieces related to vintage video games, a lot of the early, original, authentic World of Nintendo advertising, that's really going to be where the money is. Because most of that stuff is going to always be scarce because it was never released to the general public. Whereas we still don't know how many factory sealed copies of a game like Super Mario Brothers or Legend of Zelda or Metroid or even later released Nintendo games are out there, because those items were mass produced. If you really want to invest in these markets, going after a lot of this early vintage advertising pieces related to these markets is one way to go. And you're always going to get a return on your investment because there's a lot of people that want to go after this stuff. Look at it this way. If you have a Star Wars room set up in your house and you already have a lot of these vintage figures and play sets and you have the money and the means, what better way to accent that room than going after these vintage advertising pieces, especially now that AFA is grading a lot of this stuff. And that's also true for vintage Nintendo collectors. That's why I'm more fascinated with vintage Nintendo advertising than I am with the actually factory sealed games themselves. And I get into a lot of debates with people about that. If you don't believe me, if you ever watch an episode of American Pickers or Antiques Roadshow, why do you think original soda pop advertising is selling for the amounts it is? A lot of that stuff was never meant to be saved. Even in my house, if you walk through my house right now, where I'm filming this video right now, you're going to see pieces of vintage advertising from Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, 7-Up. A lot of those pieces are worth a lot of money on the secondary market. The reason why I own those pieces is for that very reason. And there's a lot of demand, even in the year 2025, for those pieces. So just keep that in mind. That's a tip if you're watching this far into the video. Next, I want to talk about, of course, the Star Wars Boba Fett 21-back action figure. This is a version A, which is first release figure in AFA 85 near mint plus condition. And of course, this was released right around 1979, 1980. This particular piece, as you can see on the screen, I'll show it. Again, nothing too spectacular. It's just the original Boba Fett figure that premiered on the 21-back card for, or is this, yeah, this is 21-back for the Star Wars line when it first debuted. And this piece, again, if you look at the subgrades, the card is an 80, the bubble is an 85, the figure is an 85. So this is pretty much a strong 85 near mint plus. Now, I would love to see the card at an 85 along with the bubble and figure. That way you get all three subgrades equal to 85 as well. In this case, though, the card's an 80. It's going to happen. This stuff does deteriorate. This stuff is hard to store and keep in near mint condition. That's why I don't like going after the figures like this themselves. But this piece sold for almost $20,000. With the buyer's premium, it sold for $19,470. So that's a fairly strong price for this item. Now it's up to you if you want to attempt to invest in an item like this. That's all I'm going to say about that, because I know that's a very controversial statement. There's a lot of people in the vintage toy marketplace that don't like my opinion in that regard. They think, regardless, this stuff is investable just because of what it represents. I look more at the risk of tying up your money in something like this just due to the fragile nature of these items. So let's continue here. This is, one second. This is one more piece I want to talk about. And again, this is the early bird certificate package This is the actual early bird certificate package in AFA 90 condition. Near mint plus mint condition. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, if you recall earlier, we went and we talked about the special early bird certificate package rare store display in AFA 70. So this is the actual store display for the piece we're now going to be talking about, which is the early bird certificate package. This sold for a little over $18,000. It looks like it hammered at $18,561.40. And again, all these prices include the 18% buyer's premium that Hake's charges. Now, this particular piece, in all honesty, I thought it would sell for a little bit more. They even put the auction estimate between $10,000 to $20,000. And in this regard, they were pretty much almost spot on. So I got to give credit here. This is something where it's a very interesting piece. Honestly, it's not for me, but if it is something that you are attempting to invest in, this is an investment grade piece in the Star Wars universe. So I don't have a problem. If you're the winner of this piece, you did fairly well. You have something that, as long as Star Wars and Kenner Toys specifically continues to be relevant, this piece should do quite well in the future if prices continue to rise and if more money keeps coming in to this market. Now, that's really all I want to cover in regards to the vintage Kenner Star Wars line. I do want to talk about one more surprise that I noticed in this auction. And this is where we're getting into another segment. The collectible trading card market at present time is on fire. And of course, we know what's driving that market right now. You have Pokemon collectors and investors, whether it's vintage cards, modern era cards on one end. On the other end, you have, of course, the sports card guys. The people who are going after baseball, football, basketball cards. They're paying a premium for this stuff. Well, believe it or not, this is also spreading to other areas of collectible trading cards. And this kind of took me by surprise. This is a set of 1933 worldwide gum Sea Raiders cards. Now, these are all graded by CGC. Now, if you look here, the auction estimate was between $10,000 to $20,000. And I honestly thought, okay, that's a little low. This is probably going to go for $30,000. Now, if you don't know what this is, even before we go over the price and what was included, if you go to the PSA grading site, they actually talk about some of these rare trading cards that were released like almost 100 years ago. And this is the actual 1933 Worldwide Gum Company Sea Raiders cards. And what this really is, it's basically a set of cards that are devoted to famous pirates and their ships and themes related to pirates. That's really all this is. And it's very shocking to me that even though these cards came out in 1933, they're still in this much demand in the year 2025, to the point where there was pretty much a bidding war for this particular set. You can see here, it got 16 bids, and the final price was close to $69,000. Again, when I looked at this, I thought, you know what? Collectible trading cards of all types are pretty strong. I honestly thought this auction estimate's a little low. This is probably going to go for $30,000, maybe $31,000. I could not believe that this set almost sold for $70,000. I mean, I think I was drinking herbal tea when the sale ended, and I literally nearly spit out my tea. I was that impressed with this sale. And I don't say that too much because being a consultant in the antiques and collectibles trade, I see some crazy stuff. I mean, you guys, if you watch this channel for any length of time, you can see some of the prices that are insanely paid for a lot of antiques and collectibles on a regular basis, where I cover some of these sales. But this one really shocked me. And the reason why I just want to add this as a final thought to this sale, keep in mind that sometimes you can have a market where you are probably asking yourself, especially if you're like even my age, like under the age of 50, you're probably looking at the sale and go, well, why would anybody, especially in the year 2025, pay close to $70,000 for a set of Sea Raiders trading cards from 1933? Well, this is an example of a very strong market. meaning the market for collectible trading cards, what'll sometimes happen when you have a market that is running really hot, it'll spill over to other categories in that same market. And this is a prime example of what we're seeing right now in the overall antiques and collectibles trade. And that's going to be the topic of another video, because I do want to talk about that in depth, where when you have an ultra hot on fire market, you can expect to see some carryover to items that may not be fourth and center in that market. Meaning, we all know rookie sports cards, we all know Pokemon cards are really hot, but it's also extending in the other less, how do I want to say this, less popular collecting categories within that same market. So it's very fascinating. So that's pretty much sums up what I want to go over in this sale. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you like these kind of videos? Do you hate them? Do you wish that I would go in depth with other items that sold in these same auctions, other toy lines? Even, I know Hake does a lot of business when it comes to like political memorabilia. If you want to see me do a video on that, let me know. I don't think if I just did a standalone video on political memorabilia, it would get a lot of views. But believe it or not, there are pieces of political memorabilia that sell for close to 6 figures. I mean, that's an impressive market if you really want to discuss it. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you for watching.